All right. I want to welcome everybody and the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor and Economic Opportunity will come to order. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Chair Jenkins Arno.
Here.
Representatives Robinson. Here. Van Workum. Cavett.
Here.
Martis.
Here.
And Chair, majority of members are present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Rep. Cavett moves to approve the minutes of the March 19th meeting. There be no objections. The minutes are approved. Just want to welcome everybody today. One of the things in working through the budget is one of the things that popped out at me was work projects, and I wasn't entirely sure how those actually worked. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring the department on and just kind of run through just what they are and how they work and that sort of thing. So with that, I'd like to bring Jay Shauna Hicks, Director of Legislative Affairs, Gregory Rivet, Chief Administrative Officer, and Amy Hovey, Director of MISTA, for their presentations, all from Leo. Thank you, well, except for Amy, she's with MISTA. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to present to you all again. As you mentioned, I have with me Greg Rivet, who's the Chief Administrative Officer for the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, and also Amy Hovey, who will be coming up shortly to cover MISTA. She is the Executive Director for the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. As you mentioned, there was an interest to learn more about LEO's work projects, as well as our federal funding. So Greg here, he's gonna level set, kind of explain the criteria for work projects. We'll highlight some key ones, including ones that were of interest to you, including our Going Pro and things like our blight elimination program. And then Amy will come up to discuss MISTA's work projects. After that, we'll lean into giving an update on our FY 24-25 enhancement grants, talk about our fettering and the state match requirements, as well as the management and operation process for keeping track of the work projects, as well as our federal funding. And then lastly, address some of the FTE questions you all had. So we're hopeful that we can clear that up today. So pretty robust agenda today, so I will turn it over to Greg to kick us off.
Thank you, Jay Shauna. Thank you, Chair Jenkins Arnold. Appreciate the committee's time this morning. As Jay Shauna mentioned, I'm Leo's Chief Administrative Officer, so I handle the budget and finance for the agency. So just wanted to start out talking specifically about what a work project is. So in accordance with MCL 18.1451A, a work project is a one-time non-reoccurring effort designed to achieve specific goals. It allows departments to carry forward dollars and authorization from one fiscal year to another, and per the MCL, those funds then become available to us for an additional 48 months of time. So it gives the agencies specifics to extend funding for specific projects beyond the one fiscal year time frame. But it's not just a given. We have to submit our request to State Budget Office. We have to follow specific criteria. We have to have a specific plan for a work project. We have to have our costs completely identified, and also our estimated completion date. So the 48 months is not a guarantee. We have to submit a specific plan to State Budget Office to ensure the objectives, the planning, the estimated costs are all put together in that work project, which allows us to carry the authorization and funding forward in a subsequent fiscal year. So work projects, just to give you an idea, last fiscal year we had 21 new work projects put into place. Of those 21 work projects, we have 70% of the funds are already obligated, 22% are expended, and we have another 8% that are currently unobligated. Those funds are currently in the RFP grant process, so that we are working to get those grants put together. And another reason for the work project, what's so helpful is a lot of our grantees are not able to submit a work plan to commit their work in that fiscal year time frame. So this allows grantees also to have a multi-year grant in addition to spend out those funds. And our grants are reimbursement based, so we obligate those dollars, but we don't pay until specific invoicing is submitted and processed and approved and verified, and then we make payments. So this also gives us that time to make sure that payments are done correctly. So our work projects for '24 are comprised of 3 federal awards, 17 state funding sources, and 1 private foundation grant that we received last year. So of all of the work projects, 8 are ongoing and 13 are one-time. So of the work projects, the large ones that we're going to cover today are the Going Pro Talent Fund, registered apprenticeships, and also our barrier removal work projects. And as you can see, and I know that both Director Corbin and Deputy Director Stephanie Beckhorn talked about these programs, but I just wanted to highlight these again because these always go into work projects to give our grantees time. So Going Pro Talent Fund, again, these are grants to employers to support training for current and new employees in high demand and skilled industries. In 2023, we had a work project of $54 million. That has been 100% expended. Last fiscal year, FY24, we had another $49 million. Those funds are obligated, even though it shows you on the work project report that you get from State Budget Office that there's that much money there. Those funds are obligated. We just don't pay them out until we get invoices and get reimbursement for them. So we have 10% of the FY24 work projects completely expended at this time. The rest is pending. And as you heard from both Director Corbin and Deputy Director Beckhorn, this is a very, very successful program. We've had over 8,000 awards and 221,000 workers trained with an average wage increase of 7.2%. Next fiscal year, we are again asking for a recommendation of $54.8 million in funding to continue the Going Pro Talent Fund. The next large work project that we have is registered apprenticeships. These are the Earn While You Learn projects. This has a 94% employment rate, and as Director Corbin mentioned a few weeks ago, very proud to say the median average earnings after completion are $80,700. So again, we have these 22,000 registered apprenticeships. We rank 4th in the nation of active apprenticeships, and we have over 850 active registered apprenticeship programs currently on the books. So very, very great program. And again, we're asking for $19 million in next year in FY26, the executive recommendation to continue that project. Next is barrier removal. This program addresses supportive services to participants that have a barrier, such as transportation, housing assistance, legal services, childcare, clothing, you name it. Anything that could be a potential barrier to that employment is funded through the Barrier Removal Employment Success Program. We have $14 million allocated for our FY25, and 99% of those funds are obligated, and we've expended 24% of those funds. Outcomes, again, employment 12% higher, median wages go up $6,900 for the participants participating in the program. We again are looking to extend that program in FY26. A recommendation for the governor's executive recommendation is $7.5 million to continue that program. The other program that we have funds in work projects is blight elimination. And this is a very, very strategic program that the Land Bank administers. It reaches all corners of the state. It's a critical investment in the future of our Michigan communities. And thanks to the funding from PA1 2023, we've been able to put $150 million towards this important work. $75 million of that was general fund and $75 million was ARP funds. And of that $150 million, $97 million was directed towards community-specific and competitive grants, $75 million from the ARP funds and $22 million in general funds. And we are proud to report that the $75 million in federal funds have been allocated, and we've already seen tangible progress throughout the state with blight elimination. As for the $22 million general fund, that was put out in competitive grants, and it was offered to every county in the state of Michigan. So we had a few counties that didn't accept, but we are open to still working with them. And of that $22,300,000 is unallocated, but we are working to get those remaining funds allocated by May 1st to continue to address blight in our communities across the state. This chart shows a graphic of the statewide distribution and the impact so far. And as I mentioned, of those grants, 98 grants was funded across 69 communities in the state. The ARP funds supported 569 projects in 39 counties, and we've had funding statewide. We also made sure that all counties had, as I mentioned, had an opportunity to participate in the program, and we're continuing to working with those communities across the state. The next work projects have to do with housing, so I'll let Director Hovey come up and talk about the housing grants, and then I'll come back and talk about how our federal dollars and our one-time grants are allocated throughout the state.
Good morning. I want to say thank you for having me here this morning, and more importantly, thank you for giving me a reason to be here this morning by appropriating funds over the last couple of years to housing. It has made a huge difference in our production over the last couple of years. Really, 100% of the funding that you provided to MSHDA in FY23 and FY24 has been obligated to projects across the state of Michigan. As Greg mentioned, all of our grants are reimbursable, so sometimes it takes a minute for them to hit our books, but projects are underway. We're excited about what's happening across the state. We work really hard with developers, nonprofit and for-profit across the state to encourage them to leverage state appropriated funds into the project. So it's never just state funds. It's often state funds coupled with federal funds, coupled with private financing. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, and so it takes a minute to get the financing closing, as well as we all know things that we're working on the state, getting through permit processes and whatnot to get projects started. So again, all of our grants from you for FY23 and 24 are fully obligated. The Housing Community Development Fund, a large chunk of those dollars go to two different areas. One is homeless, and the other is our My Neighborhood program. So I just wanted to highlight this program specifically because it's in response to our regional housing partnerships throughout the state. As you may be aware, we have 15 regional housing partnerships. They create regional housing plans. We use the funds the state appropriates to the Housing Community Development Funds to fund the My Neighborhood program, which it funds the implementation of those regional plans. So it's really listening to what the individual regions want, what they need, what their values are, and responding to that program. Next slide, please. Housing Readiness Incentive Grant Program. These funds are completely obligated. We have no further funds for this program right now, but it has been very impactful over the last couple of years. As we know, there's lots of different steps to addressing the housing shortage and crisis across the state. One of those is looking at our land use planning and policies with municipalities across the state of Michigan. The Housing Readiness Program provided $50,000 grants to townships, counties, and cities across the state to help them update their land use policies to make it easier and more efficient to develop housing. Employer Assisted Housing Fund is a program that we just launched about 3 weeks ago. Is a $10 million pilot program, which we used FY25 state appropriated funds. Across the state, when I'm meeting with employers, the one thing that they consistently say is they are having a difficult time attracting employees because there is no place for them to live. Last year, we created the employer housing toolkit to tell employers how they can get involved in helping to create that housing. This year, we created this pilot program to help incentivize them to get involved in housing. It is a dollar for dollar match. So while we are putting $10 million into this program, we know that that really results in $20 million going into housing across the state of Michigan. As I mentioned, this has been about 3 weeks. We already have committed $6.5 million of the $10 million that we started. The governor did put $25 million in her recommended budget. We hope that you all will consider that. It's such a high demand, and we love that it's leveraging funding that's not typically going into housing to help really increase the impact of what the state can do to address the affordable housing shortage that we have in our state.
And now Greg Rivet will come back up and talk about our enhancement grants.
Thank you, Jashana. Committee, I wanted to take a minute. There was a question about enhancement grants that are appropriated to LEO. These are the grants that are in our one-time appropriation line and are sponsored by legislative members. So we have grants and a grants division within LEO, and they do a fantastic job getting all of these dollars on your behalf out to communities across the state of Michigan. So in FY24, we put over 150 one-time grants into a work project to continue those projects through the next fiscal year. Many grantees need more time to complete their grant process. So we plan for that specifically, and we do a number of grants for multi-year. That necessitates us putting those dollars into a work project so we can carry it forward into the subsequent fiscal years. So of the 150 one-time grants that we received legislative packets for last fiscal year, we have 100% of those grants executed, fully executed, and 28% of those funds have been fully dispersed. In FY25, there were 207 one-time grants that we received. And of those grants, we have 48% completely executed. We have received 86% of the legislative sponsor packets. We're still getting more as the days go by, and so we are continually working to get those grants completely executed to the grantees. We don't execute a grant, though, until we get that legislative sponsorship packet. So we have a few more to receive, but we have received 86% of those. We are required to report legislatively March 15th. We posted a report on our FY25 enhancement grants on the LEO website, and that explains every grant recipient, the dollar amount, the purpose of the project, and who the legislative sponsor was, so that's available. Then we report again in June and September on our enhancement grant process. We've also decided as a department, given the number of grants, that we are going to create for the public a grants dashboard, which will allow for members of the public and the media or whoever to go and see. It'll be a map that shows the geographic distribution of the grants, and then you can click on those areas and it'll bring up the information on that specific grantee. So when that's fully developed, we'll be sure to share it with the committee so that you can go out and click on our grants, our enhancement grants statewide, and see where the funding resides. Another question that came up in the prior committee was on our federal dollars. LEO, as you know, has a budget that is comprised of 65% federal funding. So in our FY25 budget, we have federal funding sources for 28 plus federal projects and programs. Those funds are distributed across LEO to 8 different agencies within our programs, within our department. And workforce development is the leading program area that has federal dollars, over 21 programs specifically. So these are dollars that we received in 2 ways. Some are codified and we get every year. Others are competitive grants that we apply for and we receive, and we get those funds in our discretionary programs. So again, the projects and the awards that we get from the federal government go to workforce development primarily. They also go to MRS, Bureau of Services of the Blind, MIOSHA, Unemployment Insurance Agency, and our Michigan Community Service Commission. So all of those federal dollars go to all those various programs throughout the department. Again, those programs we get from the federal government, we receive and we follow the federal fiscal year. Our discretionary funds we cannot spend until we get supplemental authorization from the state legislature. So we go through the supplemental process, which takes some time in order for us to even begin spending any federal dollars or private dollars that we receive. So that really necessitates us putting a lot of those dollars into a work project so that we can carry those funds forward. And we have typically 3 years to spend down federal dollars. So we automatically look to the work project vehicle to put those federal dollars into each fiscal year. Because federal dollars come with matching requirements, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about how we match our federal dollars. So matching of non-federal dollars is a requirement to utilize federal dollars, and we typically look to our state funds and to provide the state match, which equates to, for every dollar in funds that we invest in state revenues, it equates to $4 in federal revenue. So the non-match dollars must be expended to utilize the federal dollars. So again, workforce development has federal match, our vocational rehabilitation has federal match, and what we are looking to do in FY26 is we're asking for authorization to spend federal dollars. The authorization is $40 million. The state investment that we need, however, is $8.4 million in general funds. So again, that allows us to access over $32 million in federal vocational rehabilitation programs. So every dollar spent, we generate $4 in federal revenues. So we've covered a lot in all our work projects, and I wanted to spend just a moment talking about how we ensure that these dollars are spent and managed accordingly, and how we make sure that they're done there's 4 ways that we do that. We all have a very stringent process when we receive federal funds. They all come with specific grant requirements. So it's our job as an agency to establish the budget for those federal dollars and ensure that spending aligns with the state regulations and federal regulations as well. So we have robust internal controls that we employ, and that includes expense monitoring and approval. All of our expenses that we incur are reimbursed as well by the feds. So we get the federal grant award, we implement the program, and then when we have expenditures, we draw federal dollars down to reimburse us. So that means the funds are strictly authorized for a specific purpose, and we conduct regular financial reconciliations to maintain accuracy and accountability. The next is the payment process. So whether the state is implementing the program or we're passing those funds on to a local unit or a grantee, they request reimbursement from the state, and before we reimburse and get reimbursed by the federal agencies, we ensure that what's on that invoice is actually what is supposed to be spent for. So we are thoroughly reviewing invoices before we submit reimbursement to the grantee and getting reimbursement from the federal government. The last area is our audits and compliance. We have a compliance unit in my bureau that looks over invoicing and program reporting and will randomly do compliance reviews for grantees. We also are audited each year at from our state partners at the Auditor General's office. Federal auditors will come and audit us. And then we also conduct some independent reviews, as I mentioned, to make sure that we are in compliance with our spending. So any of the review process that has any recommendations, we quickly move to implement any recommendations from from those reviews to make sure we're in continued compliance. Through these measures, we aim to have a high level of integrity and accountability when it comes to managing both our state and federal dollars. Okay, so then lastly, there was some questions about our FTEs and our work plan within the state of Michigan, and I wanted to talk to those points specifically. We get a report from the Civil Service Commission, which we reports out our FTEs. We do not change that or modify that, but we do provide notes in terms of how those FTEs are allocated. So I know there were some questions about how is it that your appropriated FTEs are more on a specific line than what was appropriated. The bottom line is, Leo, we don't go over our total FTE allocation ever. We have funds that come in and people that get hired that come into our administrative services line as a default code. So you'll see more FTEs in our admin services and executive direction line because of that default coding. Once they're hired fully, then we move them to the appropriate areas. There was another question about how can we have FTEs when there's zero authorization. So we have a couple of programs where FTEs are authorized in boilerplate. The MyHigh program, our Prosperity Bureau, and those FTEs, because they're authorized in boilerplate, do not show up on the FTE report. So you will see 0 FTEs authorized, but you'll see an employee or 2, and that is why those numbers don't coalesce, because of that boilerplate authorization of FTEs does not correspond to FTEs on the appropriation line. We also have FTEs that if we get a federal grant and we hire a limited term employee, just for the duration of that grant, to implement that grant, you will also see an FTE on a grant authorization line that is part of our boilerplate authorization, not an authorized FTE. So those employees are temporary, they're limited term, they're reallocated, they're in the same appropriation unit, but they're working on a specific project for a limited amount of time. So our work plan, Leo has a robust work plan. A vast majority of our workforce is in person, working out of a workstation assignment. Our teams work full-time on delivering results to our Michiganders across the state. So we have brick and mortar offices across the state, and we also have field offices throughout the state. So we take action when we have the ability to find efficiencies and reduce burdens on taxpayers. We are currently consolidating a couple of our privately leased facilities, and we have actually just brought over 500 employees back downtown. We are now in the Elliott Larson building. Our Employment and Training Bureau recently moved into the 4th floor, and our Leo executive team and several other bureaus are now occupying the 6th floor of the Elliott Larson building. So that is our presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, appreciate it. It's a lot of information, and appreciate you answering the questions that we've had over time. So yeah, one of the questions that I had was about the accountability, and I appreciate you laying that out, how you keep track of the different work projects and how you make sure that those are on track. Do you ever look at like the return on investment to make sure that, like we have, the legislature does approve the funding for that, but do you ever look at, okay, this money was well spent, not necessarily that it just was spent? Is that something that you look at as well?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Chair. The outcomes are always a part of our reporting process when we have federal funding. As I mentioned earlier, we report out the outcomes, as we mentioned, on the Going Pro Talent Fund, the barrier removal, all of those outcomes that I listed, and then the PowerPoint, we track those with each funding source.
Okay. And let's see, I had a question for the Ms. Amy, actually, if you don't mind. I just had a question about how you talked a little bit about that your grants are spread out across the state and that sort of thing, but I did hear from someone this morning that was telling me that it's difficult to get some of the funding to some of these more rural areas because, say, developers don't necessarily want to invest in those areas. It's difficult to get the return for their investment. How do you see that improving over time?
Well, we have a couple initiatives happening right now. One is we are partnering with a nonprofit where Misha's on the board of the nonprofit called the Great Lakes Housing Services, which will provide free consulting to local governments and nonprofits to help with the development of housing in those areas that just don't have the capacity to become housing ready. In addition to that, we are actually creating a checklist, a housing ready checklist for local governments across the state that really has the best kind of policies and things to do so that when you are putting an RFP out for a developer, you're more likely to attract someone. And we're vetting that right now. We have a draft in place through developers to say, hey, is this what you need to be willing to come and work in some of our areas in the state that are not currently being served by developers? In addition, we're creating a developer list for municipalities where we have the developers in Michigan, as well as what areas across the state they're willing to work in with their contact information so that municipalities will have a better connect with those folks. So those two initiatives are in process right now. They're in draft form, so they are not done, but we anticipate that will be rolling out within the next 30 days.
And then I also had a question about the employer, your new program. How it works exactly. So the employer becomes a developer, or they become the funder behind the development, and then do they own the development? And then do the people own the homes? I guess there's just a lot of questions to go along with that.
Great question. We're very flexible at it. So the majority of the projects that we have seen come in so far, employers will not be the developer and they will not own the rental units, or certainly they're not going to own the homes, right? We're partnering with a developer. They're contributing funding or the donation of land. So we will take the value of donated land as their contribution as well. So we're not seeing, for the most part, employees owning the homes themselves or the rental units. Now, they do have the possibility of doing that. And we have some employers in the state right now that own housing for their employees. If the state, through MSHA, is investing in these rental units with the employers that are going to be employer-owned, we do have a restriction that if that employee leaves that employment for any reason, either voluntarily or being let go by the employer, they cannot be displaced from their housing unit. Because we have a lot of concern about folks feeling trapped. And so we have that in place. And of course, with the program side, which is either down payment assistance, some employers are contributing to down payment assistance, which then we match, or rental assistance. Those obviously have a different set of compliance rules.
Thank you. That's I know it's a new program, and it's just a lot of questions about that. And so just wanted to go back to the FTEs real quick, and just wondered if you could walk through that one more time. Sure. It's just a little bit confusing how, a lot of times the numbers just don't add up, and just want to make sure, how many actual FTEs there are. Are there numbers that are there that we have unfilled FTEs that are just kind of waiting?
Yes.
Just kind of curious on that whole issue.
Absolutely. So Leo, as an organization, has a total authorized FTE count of 2,180 FTEs. We currently have 2,067 FTEs filled as of the last 2/15 report. So we have 113 vacancies. that we are still working on. And as you know, like any business, we have people that get hired, we have people that are retiring, we have people that leave. So there's a constant rotation of people coming and going. And we have not ever exceeded our FTE authorization. As I mentioned earlier, when people are hired, they're defaulted to our executive direction line. So you will see that we have a total authorization of 66 FTEs and that there are currently 97. That report is a snapshot in time. So on that day when Civil Service ran this report, that's what it shows. So we then allocate those employees that are hired, newly hired, to their specific program areas. We're going to talk about how we can address that issue moving forward so that it doesn't appear that we have more FTEs in our administrative line. That is not the case. I also mentioned we have programs that are authorized in boilerplate, FTEs that are authorized in boilerplate. So they don't show up on the total authorization line. So if you look at our report on our one-time appropriations, you'll see that there are 0 FTEs authorized. That's because those are temporary programs. So we don't want to put a full-time equivalent. We will, however, hire a limited term as authorized in boilerplate, and they will be reported because we want to show that that employee is working on that one-time appropriation.
So like say in the Global Michigan, for Global Michigan, it has 22 actual versus 15 authorized. So is that part of that
That is, there
fluctuation?
are 7 employees that are allocated, reallocated to work on a specific project for a short amount of time that we reallocate to the Global Michigan office temporarily. Those are limited. Anytime we do a reallocation and we have to an increase in service, those employees that are added are limited term employees.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you. We have a question from Rep. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Permission to ask 2 questions?
Yes.
The first question is, I believe you said you had, first of all, thank you, all 3 of you, for coming in and giving us some information today. You said you had 113 current vacancies in the FTEs, is that correct?
As of the last FTE report,
Do you know how many of those have been vacant for over a year?
I would have to get back to you on that. As I mentioned, I can look into that and see how long they are, but I don't have that figure
Okay,
in front of me.
that'd be fine. And then the other one is, I believe for you, Amy, it has to do with, much like the chair here, the Employer Assistance Housing Fund. I'm fascinated with this. It allots $10 million fund offers dollar for dollar match to employers. That's an added expense for an employer. How much interest are you getting in employers to contribute to this? Is it growing? And how does that work?
So we've only, as I mentioned, we've just launched this 3 weeks ago. We already have 16 applications in process. So, I mean, there's a lot of demand from employers. We will not have enough funding to fund all of the applications that are in process right now. So there's a lot of interest in people wanting to become involved, employers wanting to become involved in that. We are evaluate at a first come, first served basis for a completed project. So, for example, like if somebody comes in with an idea, but they're not ready to go, we don't complete that, or we don't count that as completed. Because what we don't want is dollars just sitting there waiting for somebody who just happened to throw their hat in, but they're 24 months from actually doing a development. So we really look at projects that are ready to go first.
So are you seeing are more employers coming forward and say, we want to be part of this? Is it growing? Have you seen that?
Definitely. And I would love if what you're, to let me know what you're hearing in your district from your employers.
Rep. Martis.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director, and for the rest of your team for being here. We had a really great conversation in committee last week about the governor's plans for permitting reform and making sure that we're able to make government work more effectively for more people. So I'm curious, as you work in the housing space, what are some of the biggest frustrations that you run into in the housing sphere to build more housing, and what are some of the reforms that we can do to make that easier for the important work you guys are doing?
Well, I would say my biggest frustration right now is the uncertainty of funds. We build a pipeline, and developers, both for-profit and nonprofit, invest in employees as well as our friends in labor invest in employees in training, and us having consistent, flexible funding to help continue that pipeline. And a lot of that uncertainty, honestly, is at the federal government. But just being honest, this is our biggest fear right now. Permitting, the lack of good zoning across the state are issues that impact housing. I do think through that housing readiness program funded by the state has been very impactful. All of those plans aren't done. They often take 6 to 12 months to be completed, but they're underway. I do also appreciate the work that's happening at the workforce development departments in adding to the folks that we have within the trades in the state. We're seeing that that is making a difference as well. So there's all these little incremental, I guess, steps to addressing the housing shortage and our lack of supply within the state.
Thank you for everything that you do.
Any other questions for anyone? Okay, I guess I just had one other question on the projects. Just, you know, if they're getting to the end of their time and, you know, that it doesn't look like they're going to finish it, does the department work with them to make sure that they finish the project and make sure that it's done and done well?
Yes, we do work with all of the program areas that are being funded through our work projects. And if there is no way possible that they can spend all of the dollars, then those dollars would lapse back to the general fund.
Okay, and then I guess I did remember I had another question in here. There was, oh yeah, it was in, it's on this form that we were given on, and it says Michigan Infrastructure Grants. There's a $67,099 that was, it looks like it was overspent. Is that, I mean, it's in parentheses, so I assume that it was, maybe I'm not reading that right. It says balance, and so it's past the balance. Does that happen very often, or how does that, is that what I'm reading right here?
Okay, all right.
What's
That one was a coding error.
MEDC? Oh,
That-
okay, I guess that's what
And
MEDC.
so that was an adjustment that was made.
That's an adjustment, okay,
Yes.
okay. Just wanted to, I was wondering how that worked, so, okay. Any other questions? All right, I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so Rep. Robinson moves to excuse absent members. There being no objections, the motion prevails by unanimous consent. And there be no further business before the committee. This meeting is adjourned.